Imagine a world where borders matter less, where an economic crisis in one country affects a dozen others, and where technology instantly connects a student in Jakarta to a lecturer in London. Did you know this highly interconnected reality is largely a result of one major historical event?
That's right, the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union fundamentally reshaped the world, eliminating the old bipolar political structure and accelerating a process we now call globalization.
And from that, a new concept emerged, the global society. It's a community of individuals from many nations participating in a shared cultural space built on our increasing interconnectivity.
It's a shift in focus from the state to non-state actors, individuals, and shared universal norms. But let's be clear, this integration is a double-edged sword.
In this video, we'll dive into the heart of this transformation, looking at it all through the lens of international relations.
So first, let's define our terms. Globalization isn't new. It started with ancient trade routes like the Silk Road and accelerated dramatically during the age of exploration.
But modern globalization is a different beast entirely. To give you some context, back in the peak of the first wave of globalization in 1912, global trade was about 30% of the world's GDP. By 2022, the sum of global imports and exports amounted to over 63% of global GDP. That's how deep the world is integrated now.
This integration got formalized post-World War II with institutions like the UN, IMF, World Bank, and WTO, which are the structural anchors of the global economy.
Now, about the global society. Today, it's defined as an interconnected community bound by shared morals and a human identity that transcends national borders.
And yes, it brings benefits, cooperation on massive issues like public health and climate change. But at what cost? The biggest cultural concern is homogenization. The dominance of Western culture and erase local tradition in globally standardized foods and media. Through an Irawan, the effects are truly multifaceted. Socially, communication is accelerated, but so is the digital divide. Economically, trade expands, but it also disadvantages workers in less developed economies, leading to labor exploitation.
The major problem is that globalization amplifies inequality and power imbalances. We still see a structural disparity known as the North-South divide.
And the statistics are shocking. The global top 10% of the population holds approximately 76% of all household wealth. That wealth gap is a direct, enduring consequence of how globalization is currently structured.
That's an incredible disparity, and it leads us directly to the enormous changes affecting young people.
The youth are the global generation exposed to a constant stream of music, fashion, and social media that transcend borders.
These global exposures mean they forge hybrid identities, creatively blending global trends with local culture. But it's not always harmonious.
The tension is often seen in traditional norms. Global media promotes modern ideas such as rapid shift in gender roles and individual freedom, which can clash directly with family or community expectation. This creates significant intergenerational conflict and can lead to a feeling of alienation.
And while technology makes them adaptable, it also makes them the prime targets of global consumerism, driving a desire for branded goods and trying their personal identity to global market demands.
Moving back to politics, globalization challenges state sovereignty. Free information flow undermines a state's ability to control its own narrative, and global trade constrains national economic policymaking.
Plus, MNCs, multinational corporations, often leverage their global scale to demand preferential treatment or avoid national taxation, essentially weakening the state's power to govern its own territory.
This is why the actors of global governance are crucial. Organizations like the UN are essential for peace, human rights, and development.
Let's look at a prime example of a nation. Navigating this, Indonesia.
Indonesia is deeply integrated into the global economy, primarily as a supplier of essential commodities like nickel and palm oil. Foreign investment is an engine for development and job creation.
It's also a digital powerhouse with one of the fastest growing e-commerce markets globally. Local digital services like Gojek and Tokopedia are now successful business models being exported, demonstrating South-to-South collaboration.
And as a member of the global society, Indonesia is active. It dispatches Garuda troops for UN peacekeeping and provides humanitarian aid to other countries.
To really understand the dual reality of globalization, let's look at two specific case studies, starting with an immense tragedy.
So the case one is about Venezuelan's migration crisis. Since 2015, over 7.7 million Venezuelan citizens have fled the country, making this the largest refugee crisis in the world.
This crisis is a direct result of economics globalization's vulnerability. Venezuela was heavily dependent on oil exports. When the global oil market price drastically dropped in 2014, the country's export revenue collapsed, leading to hyperinflation and a humanitarian catastrophe.
This situation tests the idealism of global society. Ideally, it means collective action, but the burden of hosting the migrants has largely fallen on neighboring countries like Colombia and Peru.
Despite being the largest displacement crisis, it has often not received sufficient international funding compared to others, highlighting that the collective responsibility is often not equally shared when political interests aren't aligned.
On the flip side, let's look at a triumph that directly tackles economic inequality. Case 2, Kenya M.Pesa.
This is a stunning example of technological globalization. Before M-Pesa launched in 2007, a stark fact was that only 26% of adults in Kenya had access to a formal bank account. The majority were financially excluded.
M-Pesa is a simple mobile money system that allows users to send, receive, and store money via basic mobile phones. It relied on globally developed mobile technology, which was far more accessible than traditional banking.
The innovation was backed by Vodafone Group, a global MNC providing the capital and the scale. The result? By 2023, the platform was channeling over 21 billion transactions annually. This explosion of digital finance is estimated to have lifted nearly 200,000 households out of poverty.
M-Pesa has been adopted in other countries, demonstrating the truly transformative positive potential of cross-border innovation in addressing financial inclusion, a problem that globalization often creates. But in this case, a global solution fixes.
So, the post-Cold War world is defined by a deep, complex integration. Globalization brings immense economic growth and technological innovation.
But it also creates systemic vulnerabilities, amplifies inequalities like the North-South divide, and fuels cultural tensions, particularly among the global generation who navigate hybrid identities and conflicting norms.
The ultimate challenge for our global society, the one that ties all these factors together, is the sustainability of planet Earth. The exploitative economic models accelerated by globalization have distributed the burdens of climate change unequally.
Human activities, from pollution to overpopulation, are driving up the Earth's temperature and fundamentally changing the world around us. The main cause is a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Gases in the atmosphere, such as water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, let the sun's light in, but keep some of the heat from escaping, like the glass walls of a greenhouse. The more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the more heat gets trapped, strengthening the greenhouse effect and increasing the Earth's temperature. Human activities, like the burning of fossil fuels, have increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by more than a third since the Industrial Revolution. The rapid increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has warmed the planet at an alarming rate. While Earth's climate has fluctuated in the past, atmospheric carbon dioxide hasn't reached today's levels in hundreds of thousands of years. Climate change has consequences for our oceans, our weather, our food sources, and our health. Ice sheets, such as Greenland and Antarctica, are melting. The extra water that was once held in glaciers causes sea levels to rise and spills out of the oceans, flooding coastal regions. Warmer temperatures also make weather more extreme. This means not only more intense major storms, floods, and heavy snowfall, but also longer and more frequent droughts. These changes in weather pose challenges. Growing crops becomes more difficult. The areas where plants and animals can live shift, and water supplies are diminished. In addition to creating new agricultural challenges, climate change can directly affect people's physical health. In urban areas, the warmer atmosphere creates an environment that traps and increases the amount of smog. This is because smog contains ozone particles, which increase rapidly at higher temperatures. Exposure to higher levels of smog can cause health problems such as asthma, heart disease, and lung cancer. While the rapid rate of climate change is caused by humans, humans are also the ones who can combat it. If we work to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, which don't produce greenhouse gas emissions, we might still be able to prevent some of the worst effects of climate change.
Ensuring true sustainability demands a coordinated response rooted in the principles of global society, moving beyond national political self-interest to implement collective action on a global scale.
This means re-evaluating the systems that allows the richest 10% to hold 76% of the world's wealth, and instead ensuring that technology like M.Sc becomes the rule, not the exception. The world is more connected than ever. The key question we must answer is not if we are a global society, but will we act collectively and fairly to ensure that connection benefits everyone?